And then we'll introduce our guest speaker, who is Michelle Decker, President and CEO of the Inland Empire Community Foundation. And Celia is unable to join us today, but she does send her regards. And then after the introductions and the welcomes, we'll do a financial health presentation, and then a reflection period with Michelle Decker, Q&A, and then announcements at the end. So with that, some housekeeping information. If you have questions, please post them in the chat box. We'll be monitoring the chat box and trying to make sure that your questions get answered during the Q&A period. The webinar is being recorded, and the presentation and the webinar recording will be sent out after the presentation. We're also going to email a survey out, and I invite you all to please take this survey. This is one of our first webinars that we're doing, and we really want to make them useful and beneficial to you. And this is something we're thinking about integrating. So the more information you give us, the more feedback you give us, the better we can make these. And please remain muted during the presentation, and then also turn your camera off if you're not speaking. So there's quite a few people today on the webinar, which is great. And that way it just can help the bandwidth if people turn off their cameras. All right. And with that, I'll turn it over to Fawn, who will introduce Jake.
Thank you, good morning, everyone. It is a true pleasure to introduce Jacob Coyne. He brings more than 20 years of experience in communications and public policy of American Indian tribes, tribal sovereignty, economic development, tribal government, gaming, and tribal gaming regulation to his position as executive advisor to the chairman of the San Manuel Band Indians. As advisor, his responsibilities include providing governmental, management, political, and policy advice to the chairman on a variety of issues that may impact the tribe. He has extensive experience in external communications, managing press and media, legislative affairs, and philanthropy. Thank you, Jake, for being with us this morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to take off my mask. We are under a strict directives here at the tribal government to abide by public health protocols that have been issued by the CDC and public health agencies and our own tribal government. So we're adhering pretty strictly to those protocols. Again, my name is Jacob Coyne. I am executive advisor to the chairman here at San Manuel. I bring greetings from Chairman Ken Ramirez and the entire business committee and the San Manuel tribal community. That you're able to join this webinar. I think we have a wealth of information and guidance to offer that will help, make us even better partners in our respective fields. The San Manuel Band of Mission Indians is a federally recognized Indian tribe, having entered into an agreement with the federal government back in 1891 to establish the San Manuel Indian Reservation. The San Manuel Band of Mission Indians is a part of a larger Serrano group. They call themselves the Mariam, and there's a number of different clans. This San Manuel, they call themselves the Uhaviatum clan. These people of the pines. Their homelands encompass more than 7 million acres in what is today, or what is known as present-day San Bernardino County here in Southern California. The Uhaviatum, or people of the pines, again, are one of several clans. The tribe's philanthropy is based on two cultural concepts or values that have sustained the people of Santos Manuel since their creation. First, Serrano Indians exercise governance over this vast territory, again, more than 7 million acres here in Southern California. Within these vast homelands, San Manuel considers and honors the creator-given, creator-endowed duties and responsibilities to care for all living things that visit or occupy these lands. And the best way to fulfill these obligations today is to partner with wonderful organizations like yours that share the value and commitment of preserving and serving our communities. The second value or concept is one we call Yawa. Yahweh is a Serrano word meaning to act on one's belief. For the people of San Manuel, it was important not just to hold beliefs, but to actually act on those beliefs as a way of, again, demonstrating your commitment to the covenants that you made with the Creator in the case of San Manuel. Just like we challenge our nonprofit partners to contribute, to continue efforts to build their capacity, build their capability, and become sustainable, we've faced our own challenges. In those early days, little pieces of paper like this, like the back of a torn off a paper sack, or a part of a napkin, or a part of an envelope rather, a napkin, a cocktail napkin in this case, or just a plain sheet of paper became funding applications in those early days. And the way this would happen is a tribal member or business committee member would be out in the community. They're either at the grocery store, they're at the drugstore, they're at the school meetings, they're at church, they're at any number of public events, and somebody will come up and tug on their sleeves and say, hey, we have an organization, we have a project, we have this effort, we have this initiative that we need funding support for. Then the business committee member or tribal member would tear off a piece of paper, maybe grab a napkin out of their purse. Maybe they've got a mailing that they just got the other day and then tear it in half, and or maybe a paper sack was handed. They would tear that apart or tear that off and then take the person's name and number, a little bit of information about what they were asking support for. Well, again, the very next day when they came to the office, or if it was over a weekend, on Monday morning, we would our staff would be presented with these slips of paper and napkins and paper sacks and the like, and they suddenly turned into a funding application, whether it was an educational project, maybe a community project of some kind that helps to address healthcare issues and others. So we've come a long way since those early days. In fact, today I consider our program to be one of the top shelf programs of philanthropy among tribes in the country. But every now and then we like to kind of reflect after a staff meeting maybe and reflect on those days when we had to go through these fairly basic ways of receiving and processing funding applications. The best part of our growth over the years, however, has been our opportunity to engage in important work with wonderful groups, nonprofits, and Native American organizations across Indian country. The importance of your good work is manifested in the ways that your service to the community is helping to address critical and sometimes chronic issues, social issues, economic issues, and others that our communities way too much continue to face today. More than 10,000 nonprofit organizations in San Bernardino and Riverside counties here in Southern California, and many hundreds more in Indian country that work every single day to improve communities and the lives of those in need. Our collective challenge today is to find innovative and effective ways to meet the increased demand. This COVID-19 pandemic today has thrown us all a bit of a curve. Now, for this pandemic to pass, we must work together to find ways that we can come out of this pandemic even stronger, more determined, more strategic, and more creative in how we serve our communities. The Inland Empire region and all of Indian country face many, many challenges. A recent report by University of California, Riverside's Center for Social Innovation reveals that foundation giving on a per capita basis by region here in California shows that Los Angeles receives about $275 per capita from these foundation sources. Orange County receives about $140 per capita. Inland Empire communities, we receive about $31 on a per capita basis from these very same foundations. Only 11% of funding that is given in the LA area. Now, San Manuel is grateful for the opportunity to serve our communities, including Indian country. Over nearly 2 decades now, San Manuel has granted more than $260 million in grants to Inland Empire and Indian country nonprofits across the country. We look forward to continuing and growing this wonderful partnership with you. Thank you for joining this webinar. Please remember to stay safe, follow public health protocols, take care of yourselves, your families, and each other. Enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake.
Heidi, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you very much for letting me know. Okay, so I'm Heidi Robertson. I'm the program officer for health. I came onto the team in December, so I'm still fairly new, but I've crossed the 6-month threshold, and I grown in nutrition and public health. So I look forward to working with you. I'll pass it over to Fawn.
Thank you, Heidi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Fawn White. I'm Education Officer for the tribe. I've been with the tribe 19 years doing philanthropy work for almost 15. I'm responsible for recommending funding and managing relationships with county offices of education, city school districts, K through 12 schools, community colleges, four-year universities, including tribal colleges and universities, and nonprofit organizations. Thank you for joining us today. Alberto?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Alberto Hasso, and I'm the Economic and Community Development Program Officer here at Manuel. I've been with the tribe for just over 2 years. I oversee the economic development grant portfolio for the tribe and working with all of our nonprofit partners, with our government agencies, and also our sister tribes or other tribal governments that we partner with. I've been working in my previous employment opportunities. I work with San Bernardino County and a few other cities. So I have a lot of wealth of experience in government. My educational background is I have my bachelor's degree in public administration and an MBA as well. So I have my master's in business, and I'm excited to share some information with you all today. And up next, we have Gina Alvarado.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gina Alvarado. I am the program associate for the Strategic Philanthropy Department. I oversee the arts and culture proposals that are submitted, and I've been with the tribe for 16 years. Cami Ray?
Hi, my name is Pamela James. I'm the operations specialist here for the Strategic Philanthropy Department. I am the first point of contact. I review the applications before they go to the program officers. I make sure all the documents are accurate. I process payments. You get your reports from me, and then I also distribute the reports to the program officer.
Excellent. All right, and then I'll turn it over to Fawn, who will introduce our guest speaker.
Heidi. Joining us today, Michelle Decker from the Inland Empire Community Foundation. I'd like to share Michelle's bio. In April 2018, the foundation hired Ms. Decker as their new president and CEO. Over the last 27 years, Ms. Decker has held leadership positions in the community economic development and has specialized in rebuilding or constructing nonprofit development organizations in both urban and rural communities. Prior to joining the foundation, Ms. Decker was the CEO of Rural Action, a membership-based community development corporation in Appalachian, Ohio, working to build a more just economy through leadership development, social enterprises, and environmental restoration. Thank you, Michelle, for joining us today. We look forward to your insight during our discussion.
Excellent. Thank you, Fawn. And now we're on to the main event, the financial health presentation. So I'll turn it over to Alberto, who will get us started talking about coordinating various funding streams.
Once again, hello, everyone. I have the privilege to doing the first portion of our presentation today. Of course, the theme of our presentation is financial health or financial management. One of the things that we really wanted to point out to to our webinar attendees is just really kind of stressing the fact of how important it is for us to know our funding streams and to make sure they all kind of, flow all together to make sure that we have the best, return on our investments and we're maximizing our input. So this is, we're going to talk a little bit about the various funding streams and why it's so important to know your funding streams from the executive level all the way down to our case managers, to even our receptionists. And again, these are just ideas and concepts that we want to share based on what we've seen. Heidi, next slide, please. So the importance of knowing our funding streams. These are some of the basic ideas that we came forward with that we really wanted to highlight, that we want to make sure that we share with you. First and foremost, we want to be able to leverage or maximize our in-kind resources, both from a financial standpoint and from an in-kind resource standpoint as well, because, a lot of the times when we work with our partners, we want to make sure that we're maximizing every dollar that we get, whether it's public or private dollars. We want to make sure that we maximize those resources. Secondly, we want to try to push for diverse revenue sources. That's definitely something that we're always trying to make sure that we encompass, right? Securing those public dollars, leveraging our private investments. These are the items that we want to make sure that we see with our funding streams. And thirdly, deep and durable relationships. A lot of the times, one of the things that we see with our charitable giving efforts is when we work with our partners is that, we have our consistent funders that we've been working with for a very long time. They always come back, with a $100,000 grant, no changes, but we also have our new funders, right? We want to make sure that we expand our diverse revenue sources. So how do we find that good balance between keeping our consistent funders happy and making sure that they feel comfortable with us continue to leverage their investments to accomplish our mission, but we also want to be mindful of the new funders that we're trying to acquire, right? The new relationships. And lastly, we have to be mindful that we demonstrate our organizational and financial capacity to carry out these projects. And again, these are just some highlights as far as things that we see that are important about knowing our funding streams. Next slide, please. Thank you. So before we get started is who gives, right? A lot of the times, we have we have tribes like San Manuel, right? We're a funder in the region. We have the Inland Empire Community Foundation, Weingar, a number of different folks, right? We have folks from government that award grant funding, right? So this can include local government from cities to counties to state government, federal government funding. We also have corporate donors, right? Like Bank of America, a lot of businesses, especially small businesses, we're starting to see an increase of them trying to become a little bit more philanthropic, which we like. Thirdly, individual donors. Right, we're seeing a shift, right, where a lot of the giving is coming from individual donors, right? We want folks to, there seems to be an increase there, and then also foundations, right? We have families that have trust in which they want to, award those fundings over to nonprofit organizations of their choice, and these are families that are running these organizations. And the different types of giving, and again, a lot of the times. The different types of ways that they give is through volunteer opportunities, right? A lot of their corporate donors want to bring their full teams and have them volunteer at a local nonprofit, doing charity works, right? Doing fundraisers on behalf of the nonprofits, major grants. That's something that we do, multi-year commitments. Via sponsorships, it's another way that folks give, right? Completely different from grant making. Sponsorships is a whole different, but this is a way of giving. And the newest one that we're seeing is social impact investing. And this is where you have a big foundation or a big donor that wants to, change the world in the Inland Empire, and they want to throw in, $1 billion to the region and really kind of stimulate the economics and improve some of the social economic challenges that we have. Next slide, please. And with coordinating the various funding sources, the main questions that we want to ask ourselves when we pursue, new grant funding is what's required of us with this funding. Is this going to require us to submit a matching grant? If we ask for $100,000 from San Manuel, are they going to require us to match 50% of that, right? That means, and if so, do we have that money? Do we have the capabilities to really fundraise for those efforts? Secondly, most commonly, we also see expenditure timelines. This is very common in government grants, right? I'm going to award you $120,000 for, and you have to spend it in 12 months or 6 months, right? A lot of the times it comes with a timeline. And, and again, before we go into this funding, one of the common challenges that we see with, when in working with our partners is that, we kind of forget about those things, right? That hey, first I have to spend this government money and then the Salmon Wall dollars. Well, we want to make sure that we coordinate both of those things because they can impact, you satisfy one requirement on the government side, but you don't satisfy the requirement, with your other funder. And again, going back to the consistent funders and the new funders, you want to make sure that everyone's happy. So again, this is with coordinating the various funding sources. And then secondly, we want to know whether it's flexible or non-flexible. What are those gray areas in which we can kind of work off is, and what are those areas that we can't, hey, this money is only going to pay for a case manager and that's it, right? So now we have to focus our resources elsewhere. And one of the other things that we always see is also the true cost of taking on this grant. A lot of the times, we're eager to secure additional funding because we want to, carry out our mission. But let's not forget about, how much money, how much of our times and resources is it going to cost us to operate this grant? If I'm getting 80 cents to the dollar, is this really worth it, right? Because then I have to come up with that additional 20 cents and from our reserves or from other investments. So again, what's the true cost of taking on this grant? And also, when will I be receiving the money, right? A lot of the times, and I know that in my experience in working in government, a lot of our nonprofits, there was a delay in reimbursement, right? Because there was other problems happening, with the grantee or the grantor, knowing how fast you're going to get paid and making sure that you actually get paid in that time, right? Because a lot of the times we say, hey, it's a net 30, but in reality, it's a net 60, or, I've seen that payments have been delayed for a very long time. And again, that impacts our cash flow. It impacts our 990. We look like we're in the red, but we're not. It's because, just someone didn't pay us. And a lot of times, and again, it's impacting your organizational health of the organization, which essentially impacts the financial management. And also reporting requirements that are imposed with some of the funding sources that we have. Right. A lot of the times, the question that we recommend asking is, yes, we're going to pursue this funding, but are we really set up to capture a lot of this information? And if we're not, how long is it going to take us? What type of resources is it going to take? Are we going to have to add new forms into our program? Are we going to have to retrain our case management staff, our receptionist staff? Who needs to know about this changing, about these sources? A lot of the times, we see that, not even the executive director knows how we can use this funding streams. And again, it's very important that everyone across the organization that works with these programs know the funding streams. And lastly, how can I leverage these dollars with other sources? One of the things that excites us here at San Manuel is that we want to make sure that our investments are being maximized, right? That we're leveraging our private investments with other public dollars, or that you're leveraging our investments to move in-kind resources. We love seeing those things because, again, we want to make sure that we continue to build on existing synergies. We like to create new things, but if we can build, something that's already there and make it, better, and it fulfills our mission, those are the types of things that we're always looking for. And again, these are just some ideas that we want to give. And up next, we have Heidi Robertson, who's going to be talking about accounting methods. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Alberto. So today I really want to focus on the comparing and contrasting the accrual and cash basis accounting, because these are really the two most popular modes of accounting, and I'm sure that you are already using one of them. So before we get into those two methods, I want to talk about the components of an accounting system. Obviously there's the general ledger, the subsidiary ledgers, journals, fixed asset inventories. All of these components are so important to have. And, especially the general ledger is something to keep looking at and making sure that everything is correct, that there's no, mistakes when an entry was entered. I know if I'm typing really fast, I have a tendency to get numbers switched around. And I know if I do that, then other people do as well. So that's, just one of the many reasons why it's important to have different eyes looking over the ledgers. I do want to point out this I did get this slide from the Attorney General's Guide for Charities. It gives best practices for nonprofits that operate in California. And this document has so much more than just the components of an accounting system. And it will be emailed out as part of your resources after the webinar. So you can look forward to that. If you're looking for a weekend read, then boy, you have it here. And then let's get into, the cash versus accrual. So cash basis is nice because it resembles the bank account, right? I can do the same sort of accounting that I do in my personal life and bring it into my professional life, which makes it a really seamless transition. It takes minimal time, minimal training as well. So if you're a smaller nonprofit just starting out, don't have too many grants, then this might be a really great option for you. Now, the only thing is that it might overstate or understate your financial health. So if you do choose to use cash-based methods, then make sure to prepare yourselves for conversations because, as Alberto mentioned earlier, different things can impact your 990s. And as funders, we want to make sure that the organizations we fund are in good financial health, and they also are aware of what's going on with their finances. So if you do cash basis, it's less work up front, but you might need to take more time answering questions. Then accrual basis is it smooths out profits and expenses, and it gives a kind of a more complete picture of the financial situation. It is more time and effort though. So if you do accrual basis, you might need someone in that position who knows how to do it. One really good thing about accrual basis is that this is really what you're going to need to use if you go out for government grants, and specifically the fund accounting system. So that means all of your transactions are going to need to be associated with a code. And we'll move over to the right hand side of my screen now, and I'll just highlight a couple differences between these two methods. So in both the example for the cash basis accrual and the cash basis and the accrual basis, it's the same amount of numbers overall. But if we look at January, if you're using cash basis, it looks like there is a huge hit to your finances, negative $6,135. And as a funder, that might be something that we would question you about. But accrual basis, right, it's kind of smoothed over and it looks like you had a net income of $890. And if you look, looking back up the top of the cash basis, you see that the income really varies. It's negative, and then all of a sudden a really big positive. But accrual basis, it stays fairly consistent. There's a little bit of deviation between the 3 months, but not much. So it looks like, things are pretty steady with your organization. Now, if you are in cash basis and you do want to make a change, the accounting software makes it really easy. I do have 3 steps laid out on the right-hand side of the screen that could take you through the process as well. And I do want to say that accrual is really helpful with budgets, over $500,000. As I mentioned before, it's helpful with government grants as well. So really the main thing is to just think about where your organization is now, and where do you want to be in the future, and choose the accounting method that will get you there. All right, and with that, I'll turn it over to Fawn, who will talk about expense tracking.
Thanks, Heidi. It's Fawn again, and I'll be covering the expense tracking portion of this webinar. Thank you to both of my colleagues, Alberto and Heidi, for sharing information on funding sources and categorizing funds once received. So once you receive your funding, you'll want to use some kind of method to track your expenses. And you may ask yourself, why is expense tracking so important? By tracking your business expenses daily, you can control costs, see what you're spending your money on, and how much you're actually spending. I'd like to share 4 different methods of expense tracking with you today. Next slide. First is Microsoft Excel. I'd like to highlight some of the pros and cons using Excel to track your funding. So Excel is useful for business applications. It's widely used by CFOs, and it's installed on more than 450 million desktops today. Some team members, they can use it without additional onboarding or licensing. Using other software systems requires some kind of onboarding or licensing, but with Excel, you do not have to actually worry about this. Excel has a high user adoption, and people know how to navigate the program quickly. So once people learn to use Excel, they can actually customize it how they want to see the information on the spreadsheet. Some of the cons about Excel: it is not designed to accomplish tasks that can be accomplished more efficiently with a dedicated software or application like QuickBooks or Razor's Edge. With Excel, budgeting and forecasting may seem a bit daunting for some. Some of your staff may tend to put a lot of time and energy into creating and managing spreadsheets, but if there's an error, it takes more time to track and correct those errors on the spreadsheet. And then with Excel, you could experience mistakes that could put your data and your company at risk. So for these reasons, some organizations opt to use different kinds of software to improve their expense tracking. A few popular options that I've found are QuickBooks, Donor Perfect, and Razor's Edge. So first, for QuickBooks Online Advanced, QuickBooks allows you to track your business expenses in one place, and you have access online and via mobile app. QuickBooks helps you manage your cash flow by accessing and sharing built-in expense reports that help keep tabs on your cash flow. And then with QuickBooks, it's easy to see funds coming and going with the cash flow dashboard. This helps track cash flow and improve your decision-making for your nonprofit. Next slide. A second option is Donor Perfect. Donor Perfect allows you to keep data in one place and allows you to raise money online. Donor Perfect has reporting and data analytics available so you can see the funding coming in and improve decision-making based on this data. One main feature about Donor Perfect is the accounting integration with QuickBooks. So if you're familiar with the QuickBooks system, this may be a good software to use. Next slide. A third option is Razor's Edge. Razor's Edge NXT allows you to maintain a clear or a clean account structure with the ability to capture program, grant, and department information unique to your organization. The software also allows you to govern your financials from user-specific access rights to powerful approval controls, so you can be rest assured that your data is secure. And Razor's Edge gives managers and user access to actionable data to drive strategic decision-making. So what is your next step? Maybe some of you are using Excel and you want to switch to a software that can help you manage your expenses. Before you switch, research your options online, like the ones that you see here. Your options online that are available, so you can think about what works best for your organization, and also consider the cost before switching your software. Back to you, Heidi.
Excellent. Thank you, Fawn. So we also wanted to leave you with a few takeaways. I'll turn it back over to Alberto, who will talk about his takeaways.
Thank you, Heidi. And I think for us, with putting this financial management webinar, we really kind of wanted to show the coordinating the various funding streams, the accounting methods, the expense tracking. I think right now with going through all the difficult times, with COVID and the pandemic, we definitely have seen a shift in giving and so on. And we want to make sure that we don't forget about the important part, right? Which is making sure that, we're able to accomplish our mission, but let's not forget about the financial management of the organization. Especially right now, it's a perfect time for us to tighten up all of our books and make sure that, we're being very diligent about our management practices. And with my part of the presentation, the three main takeaways is know your funding sources. Whether it's an individual donor and they have specifics of where they want their funding to go, or if you're working with a county government grant, let's make sure that we understand some of the parameters that are set forward and what this money is supposed to be intended for. And also let's explore the areas of flexibility and let's clarify if we have any questions. Again, I think, 80% of the times, most people are, you can just ask the question and you'll get a response, right? So let's make sure that we understand our funding sources and we also understand the areas of flexibility. Secondly, be realistic of what you're able to deliver. Keep in mind your organizational capacity, your financial capacity as well of you taking on new grants, right? Because I think oftentimes that's often overlooked. And again, we want to make sure that if we do acquire a new funding source, that we're able to deliver on it and accomplish all of our program outcomes, and that we're able to spend the money in a timely manner. And of course, making sure that we're in compliance with any regulatory requirements that come with these fundings. And lastly, let's try to find the areas of intersection of other funding streams. Again, going back, how can we leverage our financial resources? How can we connect our volunteer program with this grant? How can I get this corporate donor, to get their funding stream, but also offer a volunteer opportunity in which they give us a financial donation, but they're also helping up our food bank, right? Really kind of finding how we can manage this relationship and really maximize this opportunity with this new funder or the consistent funder. And up next is Heidi with accounting methods.
Excellent, thank you. Now, my first point is remember to check your books frequently because it's always good, especially right now, right? It's good to stay aware of your financial health. Just check for errors. And then also, if you are a grant writer or executive director or whatever your position is, as I talked about during my session, that funders will ask questions and they'll want to know why your 990s look a certain way. And so the more that you're abreast of the situation and what's going on with the accounting method and what's on the books, the better you're able to answer those questions. And cash basis, it's great because it's so easy and it's wonderful for new profits starting out. There's definitely some benefits to it, but it also may misstate your financial health. So definitely prepare for that. And then accrual basis accounting does help smooth revenue and expenses over time. It does take a little more knowledge to get there, but accounting methods or accounting software nowadays can make that a little simpler. And with that, I'll turn it over to Fawn.
Thank you, Heidi. So as you can see, with the information shared from Alberto, coordinating your various funding streams, and then also Heidi talking about your accounting methods, you can see that expense tracking is really crucial, when it comes to nonprofit organizations. So some of my takeaways, I just want you to think about, there's always different options available for expense tracking. So I know if you're like a smaller nonprofit group, you may use Excel, but maybe if you're a larger nonprofit, maybe you're using a more advanced software like a Razor's Edge. And then also think about which system works best for your nonprofit. Keep in mind, you have your staff members, you may have individuals that are afraid to learn new software. So like say, for example, if they're going from an Excel software to Razor's Edge, then, there's like training that you would have to do for your team members. So kind of keep that in mind as well. And then third, just consider the cost prior to acquiring your software. So you may have that one-time, purchase for using like Microsoft Excel, but if you acquire like a Razor's Edge NXT, that may be a little bit more costly, but can definitely consider your cost option, if you're planning to switch your software. Thank you.
Thank you. Oops. All right, and with that, I'd like to invite Gina and Michelle Decker to do the reflection portion. So Gina, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Heidi and Fawn and Alberto, for your presentation. It was useful information I hope everyone can use. And thank you, Michelle, and welcome. What are some mistakes that you see nonprofits make when discussing their financial situation with funders?
That's a great question. I'm not sure that I ever quite see a mistake. I've made plenty of them in my own career. Probably really really making sure that you've got the information in your pocket, that you've got the basics. And again, I hate to characterize it, as a real flaw here, but knowing what the narrative story is of the numbers, because budgets and the financial management is really for you as a leader in your organization and for your mission. And they tell a story, right? It's not always just about a line item. It's about, nor is it necessarily what platform you're using, but about whether you're on a growth trajectory, whether you're holding steady for the year and you have a gap here, whether with these funds you get to do X, Y, Z more. And I think that's what gets funders excited. One thing I do see at the foundation, the philanthropy side, is sometimes people just forget to submit the basics, like the operating budgets. So just making sure that doesn't happen. Yeah, I think that would be it, Gina.
And what are some of the main takeaways that you believe we should all be mindful of?
Well, budgets grow as organizations grow, which means financial management systems grow, and it really is understanding where you're at on a trajectory. And probably, not necessarily overbuilding for the moment. I think every time I've done 3 platform transitions, and I hope I don't have to do a 4th at some point. One of the things that was really helpful for me when I was running Rural Action, our biggest committee was our finance committee, and our strongest advocate was our board treasurer. And those board members and community volunteers, because it was a fairly large committee, got together, and sometimes they would push me because I was happy with the way things were going. I just wanted to keep doing the work. But they could see that we were on a certain growth trajectory and that we needed to up our game. And even now at the foundation, we're looking at new forms so that we can think about managing growth and be ready for that kind of growth. And so I guess I would go back that our board chair, our board treasurer rather, and our finance committee were really critical parts of making some of those decisions for where we as an organization, because I couldn't always see it.
Okay. Do you want to add anything that we might have missed in our presentation today?
I think that I think you guys covered a whole lot of wonderful stuff. There are some really interesting tools out there like real cost accounting. When we think about embedding, and I go back to what Alberto was saying about what really costs to take this money. And, in every audit I've ever been through, 10% is going to overhead direct, which means that 10 cents out of every dollar really does need to go to the management of that dollar. And I think that those are the kinds of ways that it helps us to get a handle on where we as organizations very often doing the work lose money and struggle and get on a treadmill, that nonprofit starvation cycle that Stanford Social Innovation Review wrote about. And so I think the thing to keep in mind is to be an advocate. And with Philanthropy, with San Manuel, with IECF, really to have transparent and honest conversations about what it takes to do the work and where we're all at doing the work. I will say, and Gina, I think when you said, what mistakes have we made? I know that in past, and again, not quite a mistake, but the difficulty of being transparent about what it costs and what we need. And so just really want to encourage that you've got allies and partners here in these 2 philanthropic organizations to think honestly about how we move forward, especially in this moment with COVID. And I know that's really hard, but that's the kind of culture that I would like to make sure we create in the Inland Empire so that we really are continuing to show up for our communities and we're not surprised when we're struggling in these moments when it's so difficult. So thank you, Gina. Thanks for letting me be here, and to the Top Shelf San Manuel team.
Thank you, Michelle. We appreciate that. We have time for Q&A. Don't see any questions in the chat box. Heidi, did you want to add anything here?
Sure. Well, I want to thank you all for coming, and we know that right now this is such an interesting time in history. There, a few months ago, everyone was just kind of completely flipped over on their heads, and I think we've seen that the nonprofit partners that we work with have really stepped up, and they've met increased demands, and they've totally shifted. You all have totally shifted the way that you operate and the way that you do business, and definitely want to take the time to commend you all for doing that, and because it's so impressive. And we want to put this webinar together to sort of bring things back to basics, right? And all the work that you do is it's useful because of the dollars that you bring in and the way you manage the dollars. So the better that you're able to do that, and I know that you all are doing a great job, the more good that can come from the community. And sometimes I think it just takes a second to step back and look at things with the fresh kind of beginner mind. And as we did, a few months ago with COVID-19 and the stay-at-home orders, we really took the time to think about our programs, think about what's working, what's not working, ways that we can improve it and make things better. And I'm hoping that you all do the same thing with your finances today, to look at what's working, what's not working, and ways that you can improve it. Because I think a lot of times it's those small incremental changes that can make the biggest impact. So,
Heidi, I think we have a question on the chat box.
Yes, we have
excellent.
one question. Can you all briefly discuss how small organizations and nonprofits who has another institution taking financial responsibility, how it can grow?
Great. So I think part of that comes from maybe communicating with the other entity. I think partly, getting very clear about what your intentions are and the way that you can make that happen. What's your 2-year plan for the agency? What's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? Sit there and get really clear about where you want things to go, and then start having those communications, those discussions with the other agency, with your funders as well. I think partly, even though the talk was on finances, I feel like an underlying theme of this was really transparency and communication, and communicating about your finances and what you want to happen. So I think, engaging in those communications are really key. And I'm not sure if anyone else has anything to add to that question.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a few thoughts. We work with some small nonprofits that are working with a bigger institution, right, for managing the financial side. I think one of my recommendations would be, when you are given the opportunity of a grant, let's make sure that we carry out our grant requirements, right? Spending the money, making sure that we accomplish our program outcomes, and also succession planning, right? Making sure that we have a 2-year plan and we have our revenue strategy that we want to make sure we bring in, and really knowing like, when is it the right time for me to get out of this, being kind of like a subsidiary and taking the next step where now I'm on my own. Because for us, you have to be a nonprofit for at least 3 years. So let's make sure that when we do get to the 3 years, that we're in a great spot and we're able to show that, hey, with the previous grants that we got, we were successful. Now we're one independent agency and ready to, carry forward our mission.
Alberto and Heidi, I would just add, we take calls very often from local affiliates that have state or national parent organizations, and we know you're serving the Inland Empire, so we're very interested in talking with you, even if you have that, 500 staff, but locally on the ground, you've only got 3. And so we don't want to bump you out. We want to know that you're there and serving. And so just always make contact.
We have one more question. Do you have to learn more information about financial management for nonprofits?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do want to make a plug for Candid. If you go to the Candid website, there's a lot of helpful resources and webinars and things that you can look at there.
Heidi, my answer would be talk to your peer organizations. Call up the organizations you like, because when it comes to testing platforms or looking at this, other organizations' experience, cost is one factor, but the technical assistance provided if you run into issues is another big factor that we've discovered when we talk to other peer organizations to figure it out.
Yeah. Yes, that's a great recommendation. And, also I think that your peer organizations could be a great way to leverage resources and leverage funds. So that could be something else to have in that conversation.
And I think for my part of the presentation, some things that we can that go into the financial management, we can go straight back to our desk, pull out the agreements that we have with our active and start reading them, right? That's a big financial piece. I know it might not sound like financial management, knowing the numbers and so on, but Michelle Decker, she said something, managing the narrative, right? We don't need you to know the cash accounting or the specifics that go into your 990, but I want to make sure that you're able to talk about that information and really kind of share, hey, Alberto, we had this negative because, we didn't get paid in time. So we had to capture it. And again, these are things that we can immediately go back to our desk, read those contracts, have a conversation with our CPA, with our board treasurer, just so we understand what's happening. We don't expect for you to know the basics, all the detail stuff, but we need to know at least the narrative, right? That type of information.
I'd like to add, so Heidi, the point or the reason we're hosting the webinar, the tribe, they're known for providing, monetary resources out in the community. So what we're trying to do moving forward, we want to try to support nonprofits as much as we can. So Heidi actually has a few announcements, but one thing I wanted to share, regarding your question of what recommendations do we have to learn more information about financial management. One thing about today's webinar, we did have a section, for you to share any comments. We wanted to kind of get feedback from you to see what your thinking is or how we can help you in the future. So from these kinds of questions, we're able to provide you these additional tools in the future. But again, like I said, Heidi will share some new announcements regarding those matters.
Yes. Okay. Are there any more questions, Gino, or should we get on to those announcements?
I think we could move on to the announcements.
All right. Excellent. Well, we have, as Fawn mentioned, we are looking for new and better ways to support you all, aside from just the financial donations. So this webinar is definitely one of them, and something that we hope to continue. We also have a newsletter that will be coming out. It's slated to come out in September. It will be a quarterly newsletter, which will go right to your inbox. So please keep a lookout for that. And then also, please contact your program officer if you have any ideas of things that we can do to support you, or questions that you have that you want answered. So, just send them to us, and we'll figure out how to incorporate that. And with that, of course, I do want to make another shameless plug for our survey, which will be emailed out, and we'll ask you some questions about, what worked well, what do you want to know, and for future webinars. So please take a few minutes to do that survey because we really want this to be useful for you. We do also have another webinar planned already. It will be Wednesday, September 9th from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And the topic will be fundraising during the times of crisis. Our guest speaker will be Krista Berry Ortega, who is the Program Manager West at Candid. So we hope that you all are able to attend the next webinar as well. And just want to thank you for coming and taking time out of your day to attend our webinar. We hope that some of this information was helpful to you. And yeah, just thank you all for coming.